Alright guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 5 tutorial, and today we're going to be talking about blueprint interfaces. Blueprint interfaces are the middleman between one blueprint to another. It allows communication between those blueprints and is oftentimes more efficient, is one of the most efficient ways to do it. Now, a common question you'll be asking is, well, communicating between blueprints, isn't that kind of like casting? And you would be right. So why would you want to use interfaces? Well, interfaces are much more efficient than casting, and is one of the main reasons why you would even want to use an interface to begin with. Now, if you're from a programming background, you may be hearing the word interface and maybe going into, Java or C++ thoughts on an interface. It is not like that at all. Blueprints are a way or interfaces are a way in Blueprint for one specific blueprint class or actor to communicate with another one. Okay, so let's go ahead here. I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture to go ahead and allow us to look at an example. So let's say I have two blueprint classes. Let's say I have a block and I have my character. And essentially, whenever something happens with the character, I want it to affect the block. Or whenever something happens with the block, I want it to affect the character. Well, generally speaking, you can't really do that unless you do casting, which requires you to get the specific object reference that you're looking for. Blueprint interfaces, on the other hand, allow you to do this. So the interface here is what sits in between the two as the middleman. And essentially, it's almost like clients and servers. It takes whatever this guy asked for, and then sends that information to allow this to happen, and then it'll take whatever this guy asked for and sends the information to allow this to happen. And that's essentially what an interface is. This is the blueprint interface, is the middleman between these two guys communicating. Cool. So I hope that visual helped. Let's go ahead and start looking at some of the code or some of the blueprint. So to get started here, I'm going to go ahead and make a folder here called blueprints. Then I'm going to make another folder here called blueprint interfaces, or just interfaces. Boom. Inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and actually let's first make our blueprints. So just like that last example, we're going to go ahead and make a blueprint block. So I'm going to prefix this BP for blueprint underscore block. Going to come in here. As you'll see, it'll open up all wonky like this. So I'm going to take the event graph, drag it right here, close the construction script, dock this right here so that way I can toggle just like normal. Come here to the viewport. I'm now going to go ahead and come to components, and I'm going to add a block, as you might expect. Boom, there's our block. Get rid of our default scene component, and we'll just leave it at that for now. Okay, all right, cool. Next, we're going to go ahead now, and we're going to come to interfaces. Okay, so here I'm going to go to blueprints, and I'm going to go blueprint interface, which is right here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And whenever you create a blueprint interface, oftentimes you want to prefix it as BPI, or blueprint interface. Now I'm going to do an underscore, and we're going to call this on our interact block. Cool. Okay, all right. So when I interact with this, I'm going to call this function here on interact. And for right now, this is just going to take a message as a string. So here I've just set up, this is the blueprint interface itself here. Here I just set up a new function on interact, which takes in inputs and outputs. So this should look very similar here if you guys can see the output part. Here's the output part. But this should look very similar to normal functions that we've worked with in the past. It's actually not too radically different from that. Okay, the only difference is that, again, this kind of sits in the middle as the go-between between these two. Okay, all right, I'm going to go ahead and come up here to BP block, Now I'm going to go to our character, which is going to be under third person, blueprint, character. And here's our character. So as per normal, I'm going to go ahead and dock this here, close the construction graph, and there we go. We can toggle between all four of our stuff now. Now, how do you implement that blueprint that we just created, or that blueprint interface? Well, you're going to click here on class settings, and you're going to come here to an inherited interfaces, and you're going to click add. And then here is our interact block. And you'll notice here that now in my in my blueprint panel over here, this new onInteract just popped up. Okay, so essentially, let's go ahead and type in input here and get the 1 key. For whatever reason, I feel like I'm number 1 today. All right, so whenever this is pressed, I am now going to implement the onInteract. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go onInteract. Boom, and it's going to allow me to call this function. Okay, bada bing, bada bang, and then here you can pass a message like hello or what have you. Now, something interesting here is going to be the fact that you have to pass sometimes the actual reference that you want this to send to. And sometimes it's only going to take a specific reference. We're going to look at that in a second here. Okay? Now I'm going to come back here. And I'll come back here. And as you see, I need to implement the interface on this graph. So here I'm going to come to this graph. And I'm going to go ahead and implement the interact block. And now instead of this time dragging out a node and sending the message, this is what it looks like when you send the message, we actually want to be on the receiving end of the message this time. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to right click and we're going to do implement event. And as you can see, the event has been implemented successfully right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set the transform of this block. Actually, just do actor location, and we'll get actor location. Boom, and we're going to create a new vector. And we'll call this move distance. I'll create it as a variable here. We'll call this a vector here, and we're going to call this move distance. Boom. Okay, should be Pascal case, so capital D. Boom. I'm going to go ahead and hold control here to get this, and we're going to go ahead and add these together. Boom. I'm going to go ahead and compile, and we're just going to grab the Z direction here and do 10. Boom. And that will be the new location. And we're going to set teleport to true, so it looks like it teleports. And then we're going to go ahead and print string here. We're going to grab this and we're going to say whatever the message is coming from here. Okay, so as you can see, this is a new custom event that is inherited from the blueprint interface, and the parameter of message here was passed right here as information. So essentially, whenever I interact with this object, it's now going to move the block this specific way. Okay, all right, so now we need to go ahead and declare here what, how do we actually trigger this? Because this isn't going to trigger all the way just yet. It's close, but it's not going to trigger all the way just yet. Essentially, it needs to know who to target, because multiple different blueprints could be communicating. So let's go ahead and go back to this graph here. This blueprint interface doesn't have to just communicate with one blueprint. It can have what we'd like to call a one-to-many relationship. Maybe this is communicating with the game mode and then with another block, like so. So the blueprint interface needs to know what I'm communicating with, because right now, if I have multiple communications set up like this, the blueprint interface doesn't know without a reference which command to send this to. Right? Think this is like the switchboard. It's going to send the routing request that you send from here to the appropriate blueprint class. But in order for it to do that, it needs to know what specific thing is going. Okay, so we're just going to do get actor here. I'm going to do get all actors with interface. And we can do now BPI. Boom, interact block. So this is one way to do it. Then out of this, you could do a for loop. So you could do for each loop. And then you could do if, in this case, this is actually just going to pass correctly. We can then do cast to third person, or cast to block. Boom. Here's our object. Boom, this will come out, boom, boom, and then this will come like that. So this is one way you could do it, but this does have a for loop in it, so this might not be the most efficient, But let's go ahead and just show you here. I'm going to go ahead and click play now. Let's drag our BP block in the scene so that way we can see it. Boom. Drag this up and go ahead and click play here. And as you see, when I click the one key here, boom, boom. Let's do it this way instead. Let's do get actor of class. We'll just do it this way, and we'll go BP underscore block. Boom. We will be able to, yep, perfect. Actually, a much more efficient way. Glad I showed this. And as you can see, the block is moving up. So yeah, guys, this is a nice and easy way just to get into the idea of a Blueprint interface. Think of it as the middleman between your Blueprint 1 and your Blueprint 2, and that is your middleman in the communication. And this is just a nice, easy way to set this up. So I hope this video helped. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.